Hi, this is Michael Waits, and welcome back to Insurance for the New Possible, a Chubb conversation. Today, we are joined by Darius Mahtani Cheung, CEO at 99 Group, and Richard Bracken, the Regional Head of Consumer Partnerships, APAC at Chubb. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining me. Let's start with you, Darius, but maybe you can give us a little bit of your background for some context.
Sure. I've run 99 Group, which in Singapore operates property portals including 99.co and srx.com.sg, and Indonesia, Rumah 123.
Right.
So I've run that for now 11 years.
Yeah.
And before that, I was as an entrepreneur as well. I started my first company, which is a software security company, and that got acquired by McAfee.
Oh, wow. Super cool. Richard?
So my background, so I did 10 years in banking. Before then, I moved over to insurance. So the last sort of 10, 12 years with insurance. So either insure tech or then working with, ING, Life, AIA, and now, thankfully, with Chubb.
Good stuff. Thank you both for that. Darius, let's start with you. How would you characterize the current state of prop tech, and how do you see it evolving over time from here?
Yeah, that's a fairly broad question.
Yeah.
Maybe let me narrow that down to Southeast Asia. So prop tech in Southeast Asia, Singapore, Indonesia, Thailand, so on and so forth. I think it's a really good time. We have gone through what, if you're familiar with the Gartner hype curve, so we've passed the era where there's plenty of money, cheap money, lots of venture capitalists, lots of hype, investing in things that simply would never had worked. And now it's a peaceful period. Sort of the chessboard has been laid out. The lay of the land is clear. Everybody's working on their own thing, improving their efficiency. I see a lot of prop tech companies becoming profitable. We are in the process of doing so ourselves.
Awesome.
So it's a good time we're building.
Do you think we went through, you talk about the Gartner hype cycle, do you think we went through, what is it called, the trough of disillusionment at all?
Just getting out of it.
You think so?
Yeah, just getting out of it.
Interesting. Really interesting.
So just in terms of setting a priority, because you obviously run a broad, suite of businesses across, Singapore and Indonesia. How do you navigate these different trends? So when AI comes to the forefront, or there's blockchain and fractional ownership, there's augmented reality, and there's all these different things. How do you understand which ones to really focus on for your business?
Cliche as it might sound, we ask a very simple question. Does it matter to our customers? Our customers are, on one side, the sellers. Sellers could be developers, homeowners, agents. And does it matter to consumers who are looking for property to buy or to rent? So sometimes they do. So AI, for example, we expect that it will have a profound impact. We don't know exactly what it is yet. Blockchain, we never thought it did, and it so far hasn't.
You were definitely right. I'd say definitely strongly, actually, in this case. But go ahead. Sorry, interrupted.
Well, because I think there was dreams of years ago of the smart contract and the end-to-end blockchain, so people could buy and get the mortgage and everything. But that really hasn't seemed to come to fruition, right?
Yeah, correct. Because actually, you take a very concrete example, right? The idea that allows you to, one of the concepts of blockchain, or what it could enable people to do, is to fractionalize ownership.
Yeah.
Meaning that, and that's a real use case. That's a real desire. There's a lot of people say that, well, I've got $10,000. I can't afford to buy a property, but I can afford to buy 5% of property, which gives me 8% yield, 10% yield, which is fantastic. And that should, in theory, happen in the future.
Yeah.
However, the real life constraints of that is not really blockchain. It's not really technology. Is government, is policies, is who actually owns a land title. In Singapore, is ABSD. Can one owner buy more than one property on a fractional basis without having to pay additional tax? If that was allowed, what would happen to the market that essentially opening the floodgates for people to invest in residential property, which for sure is going to shoot up the prices, and that's not something that most of the country wants.
Right,
so
okay.
The
so
real
it
life
turns
problems,
into a political issue as much as...
Yeah, more policy questions and IRL issues more than technology issues, right? So blockchain can come as a solution to an environment where that is actually needed. And so the contrary example to this is that we're starting to work with a company that mostly is based out of Bali, doing fractional ownership on villas. It's a company called Goro. So they actually use blockchain, but it's completely hidden. Most of the customers who are buying into a fraction of a villa doesn't even know it is on blockchain.
Right. Okay. Is this kind of like a modern version of the timeshare model evolved?
Because timeshare has such a bad reputation, I try to stay away from it. And the difference is that it doesn't try to put together as a complicated. So I think a lot of the timeshare scandals and the timeshare scams comes up with a lot of obfuscation. So they're very, very transparent, which is what we like about why we're thinking about partnering with them. So they didn't have, for example, if you buy a property, you would, in theory, appreciate, but you also get a few days, so you feel good about it. No, they said, like, no, this property is 8% yield. That's it.
Right. Okay.
You don't get to stay. You don't get to anything.
It's
right?
much more-
Like, I'll give you money.
Much more black and white.
Black and white, transparent. Yeah.
I was interested what you said about AI, because we were obviously at the PropTech conference in Bangkok together
right,
a couple
yeah.
of weeks ago. And what really struck me, it's my first PropTech conference, and what really struck me was probably about 99% of the presentations were to do with AI and the impact of AI on your industry. And how basic internet traffic was going down and hits to website, and people were instead looking to use the AI bots in order to be understand the market and ask questions about what the right properties are, rather than perhaps going to the sites such as yourself. Are you seeing that as an impact? I mean, that's really interesting.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It's a question we ask all the time. For us, that hasn't happened yet.
Right.
And we don't think that's going to happen for quite a while in any meaningful way. However, we do see referral traffic from ChatGPT, from Perplexity.
It's reverse in a way, right? They go there and then they come to you.
Yeah, they end up coming
They have
to
to end
us.
up coming to you at the end,
the
right?
reason is because from a buyer psychology standpoint, I would like to ask, for example, you would ChatGPT, for example, is great for converting and say, well, where can I go to stay for $5,000 in Singapore for rent a month, and it has 3 bedrooms, and I can get to Changi Airport and my office within 30 minutes. You can do that on 99, but it's somewhat more natural to do it in natural language in ChatGPT. And then ChatGPT would then decode that into a search query that would direct you to 99 to actually let you see the listings.
Right.
The reason why you wouldn't look at listings in the ChatGPT environment today, again, it can change, but today is because you tend to want to compare all the listings. You want it in a table format. You want your filters to say that, well, okay, this is too expensive, this is too cheap, this is bigger, this is nearer MRT, and you want to have that experience to filter because it's a big purchase.
So you seem more friend rather than foe at the moment. Are you incorporating AI elements into there, or you?
We've been doing, I mean, AI is sort of a buzzword, but we've been doing AI for many, many years.
Right.
We run the largest, sorry.
I was just going to say, are you suggesting that people at the conference were saying that it was going to take traffic away from portals and that people would do all of that work just inside of these AI platforms? Is that what they were saying at the?
Well, certainly one of the speakers, he presented that basically the hits to the websites, or the property gurus and everything were internationally going down.
Really?
Whilst the hits to the AI were going up. And then obviously the marketing challenge around marketing revenue, which is the big revenue driver of the industry, and what the kind of impacts that was. So that set the tone, really. I think that was the keynote.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, somebody was certainly pitching that vision. But I don't think that is true. I don't think Property Guru's traffic has gone down. I don't think our traffic has gone down. What has gone down is that Google traffic has gone down.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
ChatGPT traffic
So it's moved from here.
Right.
It's moved from Google, just like the search engine, to let me get something that's more sophisticated so I can get more information, so then I can make a better decision on 99Co.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. So the behavior is at the very beginning of the journey. What people used to search for property for rent or condos for rent.
On
So
Google,
simple queries on Google that end up in Property Guru or on us. Now is a much more sophisticated natural language search on ChatGPT that still end up on either of our sites.
Interesting. But interesting keynote, yeah?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, we've been doing AI a long time. There's many applications for it. So we run, for example, Singapore's most recognized automatic valuation model. So AVM. So basically you punch in an address, I tell you how much it's worth. And it's pretty accurate. It's 98% accurate. It's called X value. So that's been running on AI for now 6 years.
And what is that based on? Is that based on last transaction price or average transaction price for that type of property? Like, what is that based on?
Yeah, so that's what the old methodology is, right? The CMA model, comparable market analysis model, right? So where we switched to AI about 6 years ago, it allows us to take in a lot more data points. So now we have 40 plus data points. we don't know exactly how it works. It's a machine learning models. And we have about, I think, 20 plus models for 20 plus segments of property in Singapore, right? Landed has its own algorithm and condo has its own algorithm and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Interesting. Do you feel like there's this convergence? Because I feel like in the market I'm hearing this, right? True for insurtech, but like fintech at scale, that there's some convergence, not merging, between proptech and fintech. And part of the reason why is one of the things you're saying is that a lot of this stuff is getting automated. And that instead of just searching for a property, you want to have the finance or all these valuations around. Is there some kind of convergence going on between them, do you think?
Between proptech and fintech,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Because there's
How
so
does that
much
work?
tied together to begin with.
Right.
And even specific to insurance as well. I think Richard and I were just chatting just now.
Tell me.
Yeah, so to give you an example, right? And this has, so if you think about, I give you a very simple example. You think about rental deposits. If you rent a place for a year, you
I really
give
want to
a
talk
month.
about this. Go ahead.
Because you used to live in Japan.
Exactly. You know this. Yeah,
Where
go
it's
ahead.
gone.
It's gone. It's
That's
a
some
gift.
cost.
It's just a
But
gift.
that's a big cultural.
It is.
So for the rest of the world, the rental deposit, at the heart of it, you think about what is it? What
Security.
is rental
It
deposit?
should be
It's
security. Yeah.
It's why do we need a security? It's risk.
Yeah.
What is risk? How do you mitigate risk for most part of
Insurance.
It's
Hello.
over here.
right? But it hasn't moved. For the large part of the world, it hasn't moved. There's some cases where it has. Germany, Brazil, Malaysia, to some extent. There's some parts of the market where we are starting to see people buy insurance instead of give a rental deposit to rent a place.
Yeah, but so who's and this is for both of you, right? But who's buying it? Because as a renter, I don't want to commit 2 months rent, 3 months rent, whatever it is, for the lifetime of my lease. Or I could use that money to invest in whatever.
Yeah.
But I could pay premium on insurance, or the landlord could pay premium on insurance. But then there's this other question of, will the landlord accept it? Because when you give them 3 months rent, now they have that money. It's not an escrow.
Yeah.
So they can do whatever they want with it. Maybe buy another property.
Yep.
Or all this kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
how's the market reacting to all of this?
Yeah, well, that, again, your experience probably came from your long history with Japan.
Exactly, sorry.
Landlord taking a huge chunk of the deposit and ripping you off and then rolling that forward as capital for that deposit, for down payment.
So I hate to say this, but for
Yeah.
me, it wasn't about me personally
I
because
understand.
Morgan Stanley paid for that or Goldman Sachs paid for that, right? So I
Right.
didn't personally care, but I was just
Yeah.
interested in the sense that, like, because I'm in the finance business, I knew how it worked.
Yeah.
And I knew how it could work.
Yeah.
And even back then, there could have been insurance products to protect against this because you're right. It's just risk mitigation.
Yeah,
All
so
it's
if you
gonna-
bear with me, right, which
Go,
is,
go, go.
so I would give two examples
Please.
of why it wouldn't work in Singapore, but and why it might work in Indonesia. We operate in both markets. So in Singapore, and why, if you kind of generalize it, it comes down to the individual market, and that's one of the challenges of PropTech because every market is different. It's
Yeah.
very, very localized. It's hyper-localized business. Now, in Singapore, it wouldn't work because essentially vacancy rate is super low. I think it's sub 2% right now.
Really?
So what that translates into is that landlord can demand deposits. And do they want to have the cash in their bank? Yes, they do. Everybody wants that. Like, everybody would prefer 2 months rental deposit in the bank over an insurance scheme that I have to claim for, figure out later, right?
I would certainly agree. But
Yeah.
then what if there's damages above the 2 months? And
Oh,
it's,
yeah.
and it's 3 months or 4 months worth of, which then
Yeah.
they're not covered for, right? And then insurance, it would cover that. So,
Yeah.
your tenant's liability insurance would cover that gap.
Yes, so you're absolutely right. So there are definitely people, especially with middle to high end homes with very high valued home content, whether it's for their own homes or for a tenant, they would buy insurance on top of the deposit. Now, if you look at the questions of whether we could get landlords to move to taking insurance instead of deposit, that's a very different question, and that's more to do with the market's demand and supply because the vacancy rate is very low. So landlord has the ability to demand and refuse to move, and that's going to be the way it is.
I think it's a fair point that if asked, they'd like both. They
Yeah,
like,
yeah, exactly.
they want their cake. So they want the 2 months and then they want the insurance on top, right?
Yeah.
In case there's anything above and beyond that. So
In more extreme markets like New York, you have to fill out a whole application. You have to submit your credit score. You have to prove that you have the ability to pay your rent. It's much more beyond. So it's all supply and demand, which is why I think in Indonesia this could be interesting because the rental you need to pay a year's rent in Indonesia to rent a condo apartment
In advance.
in advance. So it hits the tenants in a big way from a cash flow perspective. All the companies that's paying for that. And the landlord, of course, they want it, but the difference is this: the vacancy rate is high.
Right. Okay. So it's
So
very
there
different.
will be some landlord who's like, you know what, it's okay. I rather mitigate my risk. I get the monthly rental rather than have it sit vacant.
Yeah.
Somebody will be willing to do it.
I wanted to ask you as well, so just your point on convergence. So I just want to ask you a point as well around that, because I think the traditional model, let's say, so the real estate platforms very much were at the front of the sales cycle. They were a marketing platform used by agents, and then the agents would take over the sale. That's now starting to evolve, so there's more and more which more involved in the end-to-end, which basically, to be quite frank, is freeing up insurance from that perspective, because traditionally we'd only then sell home content via the agent, whereas now we're very much into digital embedded insurance, which is in-path, high affinity, low friction, which very much fits in with the new kind of real estate technology models, right? What's your? Are you seeing that convergence? Are you seeing there's greater affinity, I think, within the sale for insurance to be embedded than it was in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are probably further from it, but some of our customers. So, for example, we have a lot of co-living operators who are our customers who are marketing their properties on the platform. Now, they all have their own website, and a certain percentage of their customers go direct to their own website and find the property. But as a co-living operator, then it is much more meaningful for you to attach an insurance to say that, hey, if you're renting a place from me, either I compel you to have to buy insurance in some cases, or I paid for you. It's free. I paid for it. It's built into your rental. Whatever way that ultimately the underlying risk mitigation for both the home contents of the tenants or the fixtures for the landlord, that's the ultimate goal. Who pays for it depends on the market. But because co-living operators, they are getting more and more digital, and the process of kind of online sign up, checkout, renewal, so on and so forth is more and more digital. So the ability from a product standpoint to embed that, to attach that in a much more seamless way, and also with data to be, I'm hoping, I'm not sure whether you've seen it, with data to be able to underwrite better, to be able to price better. I think that is going to come more so. I don't think we're there yet. I think that's going to come.
No, I mean, and that is a massive theme for us going into this year in terms of personalized insurance, but and picking up more data points from our partners so we can give that, the segment of one experience rather than more general insurance. We can have very much targeted to the
so he mentioned Indonesia, which is really interesting. And I want to get to you on this in a second, but for you, if you have to pay a year in advance and you actually have the capital to pay a year in advance, you're probably either well-employed or wealthy at some level. Otherwise, you can't pay a year in advance. But just like the landlords in Singapore, and I love this idea that real estate's fundamentally local, right? But just like the real estates in Singapore want the money in their pocket so that they can have more leverage with their own cash, I presume a renter in Indonesia wants the same thing. Yeah. So is there a way to build a fintech product and an insurance product around this idea of, you don't pay it upfront, you don't pay the full year, but the fintech company figures out a way to finance it, and then we embed insurance into that both insures the property and the payment over time.
I think we're going to say. I mean, it's exactly what Darius.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, no, it's exactly what Darius put to me. I think as he was
because that's the reverse. Sorry.
No, as he was walking over, I think he had a light bulb moment, and then he was asking about.
And we both had the light bulb moment.
He raised that as a point. I think at the moment the product that we have is more about the liability insurance for damage, tenant liabilities for damage. But could we extend that to cover default?
Yeah.
Then that's something that we certainly could look at.
But again, it's fundamentally different because in Singapore, that's probably not. I mean, I guess you could still insure it here too, right? Because you just pay whatever the normal deposit is, but then there's also the default possibility. You could lose your job. Yeah. You could have a medical emergency, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, always a big part of it as we're entering into, let's say, a new product, new proposition, new market, is having the data.
Sure.
So it's understanding let's say the historical data to understand how many defaults are in the market, what kind of factors play in,
who's better at this, who's not so good at this.
Exactly.
Just conceptually.
So with that being said, I mean, do you have do you store a lot of data around defaults, and do you have an understanding of that? Is that outside of your scope?
I think in Singapore we would.
Right.
But in Indonesia it's much harder. Yeah. So even then we don't have. We would have the data from the landlords, but not the tenants, which means that we way of being able to look at what are the correlating factors that
Right.
contribute to a tenant's default.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, we only know in this category, this is X% default.
Let's certainly take that one offline, though. We'll
Yeah,
have a look at that.
this sounds like a really interesting conversation. Can we talk a little bit more about the supply-demand dynamics in Singapore? Like, the market's really tight. Has it always been really tight? And is it tight in every sector?
Tight for tenants and buyers.
Yeah, tight for tenants. and
Landlords
buyers.
are pretty
No,
happy.
landlords are super happy. But again, if I understand this correctly, right, the government, since its inception,
Yeah.
has been committed to some type of ownership, home ownership,
Yes.
for everybody,
Right.
right? So there's always been this pull, this tug, right, of how much should we build
Mm.
and how much should we not build?
Mm.
Obviously, landlords will never want you to build as much as you want to build, but renters and buyers want you to build more,
Right.
right? But have the dynamics changed over the past 10 years as, like, the population in Singapore is evolving,
Yeah.
right? I'm just curious.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is changing all the time. So is what the Singapore government has done very well is to really structurally build out all the levers in the market, so
Such
that they can
as?
pull and push the levers.
Right.
So such as most recent, one of the major developments would be in this year's budget, the Singapore government announced 50,000 HDB units to be built. That's a
Okay.
very large number.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, amongst other things, right, in terms of policy changes, taxes changes, so on and so forth.
Sure.
But what that does, for example, is a very large supply to be created, especially for the middle class. So today, if you are lower income, to buy a HDB actually is pretty good, because the grants and the incentives, you could almost buy a HDB completely for free with zero deposit. So
Just based upon the CPF you have, and
and the grants and so on and so forth.
What's
right?
CPF?
So it's the pension.
Compulsory savings.
Yes, thank you.
So releasing that, so they have the lever to be able to say that I'm going to build more HDB, because today young people are finding it challenging to be able to afford a HDB. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but they have many levers to they think.
Yeah, no,
What I love about, I mean, the levers
Yeah.
here, and I think you're exactly right from everything I've researched around this, is that because when it comes to the net population, if you just look within the Singaporean, then it's about flat. It is a brilliant model. What is this stat? Something like 80% of Singaporeans live in HDB.
Yeah.
So it's
That's right.
phenomenally successful.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But just this idea that it's a right to be able to have a place to live.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't need to get too political about it, but it's been there since the beginning.
Yes.
This is not a new policy. When the country was founded, it was founded on one of the principles was everybody should have a place
Yeah, I
to
think
live.
it's been there in the beginning as a philosophy.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
the ability to get to actually
Sure,
realizing
sure.
it took maybe 2-3 decades. Yeah.
If the market's really tight in Singapore, is there, and we're not concerned, but we're thinking about default and default insurance, is there a way to use data and maybe artificial intelligence to understand like which segments are not having the ability to rent because people are saying this group or that type of person may not be able to rent or may have a higher default rate when in fact they don't?
But it's interesting. I mean, I see this less as a cultural issue and more as a financial one.
Go ahead. I agree with you.
Because at the end of the day, if you need to make good the property and you need, let's say, to paint it and freshen it up and steam clean the carpets or whatever it is, right, that's a financial outlay. And I think that's really what the landlords are concerned about, which, again, you can cover it for it one way or the other, right, if it's above and beyond what the deposit would be.
But when we studied it, comes down to it's just cost.
Yeah.
No, it comes down to cost. And so that we asked a lot of what if questions. What if there was a cleaning service, and what if there is this mitigation process, and what if this is what it is, and there was a way to ensure that the tenant pays for it? Yeah, it's fine.
Then it's okay. I
We have found zero racist landlords.
I had a personal experience with this as well. So I've got 4 kids, and only myself to blame. but then we needed a big home, so we needed sort of like a 5-bedroom home because my mother-in-law was living with me as well. And as part of that process, we'd applied for a place, and then they came back and said, "You have too many children."
You have too many children.
They will.
that may be true, but I don't understand.
I know they will damage my home. So
Right.
again, it's a financial thing.
Did
right?
you manage to convince
No.
them? No.
No.
Did you offer to up your deposit or
No,
something?
I think they were happy just to go for a family with 2 children in a very big home. But
Yeah. I mean, unless it's a really special place, there's enough in the market for you to find somebody else who would.
yeah, absolutely.
So maybe an insurance that allows you to to take the insurance instead of rental deposit, we get somebody to guarantee it or at least be aware of it.
Yeah.
Somebody
yeah,
that you
yeah. But I mean, the more we talk
get
about
your
this,
boss to underwrite.
yeah,
it.
exactly. But the more I see possibilities for this, because you talked about personalization before, right? Every rental and every renter is different.
Yeah.
And the more data you can get on them personally, the more interactions you can have with them, with their potential insurance products, and selling to the owner. And I'm curious as well, from both of your perspectives, is, we talked about money in the pocket, right? But do you think this is a generational thing? Where the existing pool of owners, right? Because they seem very comfortable doing this in Germany, and I get it that the vacancy rates are different, but it has to be more than just that, I think. And is there a generational thing where just the older owners are just more used to this idea of, I've always taken a deposit, and I'm always going to take a deposit, and maybe once I pass this property on to my daughter, she's not going to care as much?
I'll say 50-50. One is that they've done it for so many decades.
For sure.
So they've been landlords for many decades.
Yeah.
They're just like, why change nowadays? That's
Exactly.
always worked for me, right? But the other 50% is also true, is that there is obviously, I think the Singaporeans are very financially smart. So they have a calculus in their head. 2 months deposit is $15,000, and that's how much, at a 6% yield on my bond. This is what it equates to.
Right.
Now, that can be calculated in. So that can be priced in.
Yep.
Right? So if you neutralize that, I think they will be a lot more accepting.
Got it. As PropTech continues to evolve, right?
Yeah.
As more than just a listing place, is there a movement towards transactions?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And can I ask why we've started with just listing and not building the transactions in from the beginning, and what had to change to make being a transactional platform part of the process? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean, but it depends on how you defined prop tech. Right? The most obvious example of prop tech being transactional is Airbnb, or
I'm talking more about buying and selling and renting, right? Because, and again, Airbnb is a great example of this. There was never a non-transactional aspect to that business.
Yeah.
It wasn't just go find the place. It was, here's the place. Here are 4 different choices. This guy is rated really well. This gal is rated even better. She's a super host. Do you want it or not? But the original listings businesses, and this is true globally, were just like, here are all your choices. Find an agent to help you. But now in the middle, you're having this agent facilitation business being built on top of the platforms. What had to change to make that necessary, possible, or
to be humanless, or to be more part of the process?
Just more part of the transactional process. Yeah, because I don't think anything's going to be humanless. I'm a big believer in hybrid experiences. I don't think even AI at its most super powerful example is going to remove humans, because when I rent a place or buy a place, I want to talk to you. Like I really do. Sorry.
Yeah. No, so the reason why I use Airbnb as an example is that Airbnb is actually nothing more than a rental platform. You're renting in
I know.
somebody's house
it's
for
just
3
the
days.
Term. It's just the
right?
term. Yeah.
So and the reason why that is fully transactional, fully online, and of course they have done a lot in mitigating the risk of making such a decision. Refunds and insurance and many other things built into it. Escrow ultimately still comes down to the fact that it is a $200 transaction.
Yeah, no, it's small.
Right?
It's
so,
small. Yep.
And if you look at the spectrum of it, if you go all the way to the other end, if I'm buying a $2 million property, that's never going to be online. You're going to go see it. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, for sure.
So,
but
there's a lot in between that's starting.
But you can still be part of the
online.
transaction, yeah.
Yeah. So, as an example, right, the co-living operators have done a pretty good job,
Right.
and we are supporting them. So they've got videos and 3D models and walkthroughs, and you can now book online. We're seeing increasing number of these people tenants are booking these places online, and there is it's 1 month rental. If you don't like it, you can change. So it's maybe a $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 transaction, and that's still I'm willing to take that risk to make that transaction sight unseen.
Isn't it also a bit of a challenge with the agents? Because when I suppose you first start and you're more of a marketing platform, then you've got a bunch of agents not affiliated with your platform, right? And then all of a sudden, if you bring on your tied agents for that platform, you're competing with your base. And so then that's going to cause some... Is that the problem? Is flipping it from, let's say, where you're a marketing platform, where then you're actually got more of I would call them tied agents or whatever to your platform, and making that transition?
Not so much.
No?
Not so much. Like, for example, we've recently opened up HDB direct owner listings. Now you can find HDB flats on 99.co in Singapore directly from owners. Agents
Which
are
is
fine
great,
with it,
right?
Yeah, which is great, and agents are fine with it. But here's the problem: the problem is that there's very few of them, and if you try to call one of these owners, they don't tend to respond to your call over WhatsApp. So
they want to be empowered to
like
do it, but they
I
don't
want to
do it.
give the property buyers and searchers
Yeah.
it exists. You can chase it down, but they may not respond to you, right?
And you're saving what, 1%, 1.5%, or whatever the commission might be.
Oh, usually it's not about saving. Usually it's that they might find something that they can't find that is not represented by agents. Just because the owner, for whatever reason, just really don't want to work with an agent.
Right.
So we want to enable people to find it.
Yeah.
Now, so it's not really the transaction fee. I think agents are totally fine with it because the way they think about it is that that guy's gonna try to sell his own house and he's gonna give up in 2 weeks.
So that's what I was just.
I'm
gonna
gonna
say.
send him a message that when you give up, come look for me. I'll do it for you.
But that's what I was just gonna say. I have this philosophy that like nobody succeeds at anything they do part time.
Yeah.
And if you like list your home, if it's like for sale by owner, that'll last for like a month at the most. And then you're like, honey, I can't do this anymore. I got a job I have to go to. Let's get an agent.
Especially in Singapore, right? So many dual income households.
Yeah,
They've got
yeah.
kids. They've
Right,
got
right.
life. Who's gonna pick up the phone and open the door and pack up the place and take photos? And
Yeah, no
videos?
one's gonna do
Not
that.
gonna do it.
Even with Gen AI, like no one's gonna do that.
Yeah.
Okay, as we look forward, what are some of the biggest challenges for PropTech at scale, or even just for 99Co going forward? When you're looking forward, like what are you worried about? What are you thinking about?
Wow, I mean, it's rather cliche, but the uncertainty in the world, macro factors. I think
I don't think it's a cliche at all. Yeah, go ahead.
it's a cliche to me because it feels like there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah.
And the reason is, but I do see it on the flip side. It's a good thing because it signals to me that, and this is not something that we used to worry about. We used to worry about market positioning and business model and product market fit and all of these things. Today, I feel like we are actually more impacted or worried about things that are out of our control. The market itself, right? Like, so we our business swings along with the market itself, and that's out of control, and that's something that worries me. Yeah.
How about other kind of, let's say, more localized risks like cyber? Do you have any challenges in that space?
Cyber, Cyber, yes. Cyber, absolutely.
And scams, and what kind of experiences have you had there, if you can share?
Yeah. No, that's a very good question, and thanks for pointing it out. So scams, and just spams, right? So people go on our platform, plenty of people write bots to go on our platform and use our inquiry button to send WhatsApp spam. Sometimes they are scams.
Really?
Yeah, it happens all the time. We probably spend 5% of our tech time fighting spam and scam, and 10% if you include in maybe more than 10% in all of what we call trust and safety, right? So ensuring listings are real, they're not scams, and the data is correct, and so on and so forth. But just spam alone is probably 5% of the time.
Wow.
It's significant, and not counting our SMS and WhatsApp costs, right? We pay for those SMS as well. So there's a cost, actual cost attached to it as well.
So what are they looking to achieve out of these?
So they are sending spam messages to acquire users. But I'm sure it's not just us. I'm sure they're doing it on a very broad scale with anywhere they can find phone numbers.
Right, okay. Because
the technology has gotten so easy, right?
Because the WhatsApps have been redirected to the agents, and then they think the agents would then join their online gambling
maybe
platforms.
they get a 0.001% conversion rate, and that's still worth it for them.
But it's a frictionless action on their side, and it doesn't cost them anything, or it costs them very little, right? So.
Yeah, it costs us a lot. It doesn't cost them anything.
Do you have anything on the more on the client side, or is it on the
client side
in terms of data or phishing or any of that kind of stuff? Or
you mean for the consumers?
Yeah, where they get scammed.
Not so much, because I think from consumer standpoint, which I guess is the investment that we put in trust and safety on the listings to make sure somebody who's posting a listing is verified.
Right.
So we put in a lot of effort. Like, for example, in Indonesia, we've gone through. It took us almost a year to get from 0% to now something like 85% of agents having a business license registration number.
Oh, interesting.
So, and I think if you dial back 2 years, that didn't exist. And it's quite significant investment to essentially look at making sure that agents are real, because it is also possible that agents on a platform, in Singapore it's not possible because it's regulated. You need a license, the government to make sure that you are licensed and properly trained and agent.
Guys, this was great. I really want to thank you both for doing this. Darius, Mahtani, Cheung, CEO at 99 Group. Richard, Bracken, Regional Head of Consumer Partnerships, APAC at Chubb. You guys were amazing guests. You should both do way more of this.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you, Michael.